Welcome to our I Am Workshop Conversation Series, a transformative journey designed to inspire self-discovery and ignite your creative spirit. With your hosts, Anna Maria Davalos, Maria Lanes, and Maclovia Martel.
It's always in the middle, so, oh my God.
She banged her hand.
I banged.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to I Am Conversations. Our guest today is a beautiful woman, mother, friend, and life coach, Maria Richardson. Hello, Maria.
Thank you.
How are you?
Hello. I'm doing great.
Can we start with a little bit about where you're from and how you became a life coach? I mean, it's a beautiful story.
I'm from Panama. I was born here, and when I was 9 years old, we moved to the United States. So my mother is 100% Panamanian. My father is half Panamanian, half American. But when I was 9, we moved to the United States, where I ended up growing up until I moved back to Panama 3 years ago. But I grew up in the United States, speaking both languages. I was in a bilingual home. I mostly grew up in Washington, D.C., where I met my husband, my ex-husband. We got married in 1991. From there, we had 2 wonderful children that are musicians, and one's living in Washington, one's living in New York City. Basically, it was at the point where my children were starting to graduate. We had a strong, challenging situation back in 2008 where my husband was diagnosed with lung and brain cancer. And we had that was about 2 years of dealing with all of that, the processes of, what to do. We just kept going. What's the next step? What's the next operation? What's the next step? We had a lot of help, a lot of support from friends, from my parents who would fly up from Panama to take care of my children. At this point in time, we were living in Maine. We decided to raise our children in Maine because it was just a more peaceful place than Washington. From 2008 till about 2010, we had to conquer the illness, the cancer diagnosis. He wasn't supposed to live. But we just took it one step at a time, one surgery at a time, one treatment at a time. And, learning a lot. I think that's when my spirituality and my psychology kind of started to really start growing again, because there was something that I was super, super interested in when I was in college. I studied communications, I studied psychology, I studied travel. I ended up in the travel industry for 12 years. And so we just started saying, okay, what's the next step? What's the next step? Our first surgery, I do remember we had some, very poignant moments or learning lessons, I guess, that stuck with me, such as right when he was diagnosed. I remember a nurse bringing a bag, with a ton of pamphlets and papers that I should read about cancer. And she also gave me a little rock with the word hope on it, which I still have. I still have this little rock right here. It's, if you can see it, hope. And I still remember the feeling. She opened up my hand and she placed the rock in my hand. And she said, do you know what hope stands for? Having only positive expectations. Having only positive expectations. That was life-changing at that moment. So I really just took this illness on with my husband as, we're going to get through this. We're just going to do it one step at a time. And the word, death, or I guess, was never really even part of our vocabulary. It just never became part of our vocabulary. I do remember one time after one of the first surgeries, this first brain surgery, because he had stage 4 lung cancer that had metastasized to the brain twice, but they discovered the brain tumor first. So when we came back from Washington, D.C. to Maine, my parents were in town taking care. My children were very, very young. The whole community was very, very, very supportive. I remember arriving at the home at our house, and we had received an envelope with a book in it. And it's like, oh, that's nice. And open up the book, and the book said, How to Find God at the End of Your Life. And that just was like a sucker punch. It was just like, who said he was going to die? We had literally just talked to the doctor the day before in Baltimore, giving us the prognosis, which was not very good, but we hadn't shared that prognosis with anybody else. So the end of life, at the end of your life, was just something that did not resonate with me. It didn't even resonate with my husband. It didn't resonate with the house, our home. And I called the bookstore and I said, who sent this? And they said they prefer to remain anonymous. And it wasn't about what struck me so much about the God part of that title. It was the end of your life kind of title. And I said, I'm not going to open the book. And I just kind of grabbed it by the corner and I walked over to the trash can and I threw it away. And that was a big, also, that was a big moment.
It lit a fire in you.
It lit a
Mhm.
definite fire. It was
Mhm.
like I was definitely sensing that I knew what I needed to stick with, which I really, I didn't think about him dying. I
Mhm.
just never thought about him dying, ever, ever. I just thought we're just going to get through this. What's the next step? What's the next step? And then okay, let's go have another surgery. Okay, he had a seizure. Let's go have another surgery. It was, the chemo and the radiation and all that, but it was just things that we just kind of followed with, we just went with.
One
And
question, sorry to interrupt you in here, but this is very important for me. Was he positive also, or just was
yeah,
this
he had a
he
great
was
attitude.
positive and he had the hope
Yeah.
also?
He only said one time when he had a seizure, we thought, well, we're done. We had done the chemo, we had done the radiation, and he ended up having a seizure on his birthday, on the first birthday of after his cancer diagnosis. And so we went down to Washington, D.C. to celebrate with his entire family. He's got a huge family. And he had a seizure that day,
Mm.
right before his birthday party. And he had it in front of my dad. And I was coming home from Target with my children again. And I saw an ambulance. We were staying with my parents, and I saw an ambulance, and I'm like, oh, that's weird. And then I realized that the ambulance was kind of going in the same direction as the apartment complex that my parents lived in. The thought might have crossed my mind, like, no, but I said no. And I'm literally right behind the ambulance, and the ambulance pulled up right there. And I walked in with the people from the EMTs into my parents' apartment where he had just had a seizure. And that's when they discovered the second brain tumor. But at that moment, that was the only time that I heard him say, because we had to go to the hospital in the ambulance and I went with him. That was the only time that I heard him say, I don't want to die. Other than that, that was it. That we really didn't consider it. I had very spiritual people contacting me and sending me messages and saying, well, why don't this is trying thinking about it this way, or
Mhm.
it was I think my spirituality just kind of opened up
Mhm.
at that moment, and my faith, just kind of became very strong at that moment. And then, so we went through that, and a couple of years after that, we sort of started regrouping with our family. Our family started traveling, started trying to gain some sort of normalcy again in our lives. But from that experience, we did grow apart. We grew from this experience in different directions. It changed him. I think it changed me, and it took a toll on our marriage. I think about 4 or 5 years later, after therapy, marriage therapy, you name it, it was sort of like we were living like brother and sister. But I also came from a very Spanish family that you don't get divorced, you don't split
Mhm.
up a family, you don't, you know, you stick with it.
Mhm.
So we were living like brother and sister since 2014. Then I started kind of regaining my own way, and I said, well, I think I want to be an interpreter. I want to be a Spanish English interpreter. So I did that for 5 years, which I absolutely loved. Loved helping people. Mostly Latin people are usually having issues. So it was always, I was a medical interpreter. So I was at hospitals with operations. I was, you know, doctor's appointments. I also did school appointments. Well, I loved it. And at that moment in time, he had already sold his company. which had allowed us to move to Maine. But he sold his company and we were living off of our savings. I think I may have manifested because all I thought about was, we're going to run out of money. 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 I'm going to open up the app.
The lack.
Big time lack.
Mm-hmm.
Really concentrating on worst case scenario. So all of that spirituality that I had learned from, that was just not, I just wasn't very conscious at that moment. And so I had to quit that job to work at an insurance company, which I really did not enjoy at all. And that job started right before COVID, just a few months before COVID. So here I was working this job because we needed the medical insurance. And a few months later, with the job that I can say that I hated it, I guess. I was sent home with my job that I hated during COVID. And so I lived in my home with that job, doing it for almost 2 years, resenting my husband for me having to have this job that I didn't want, resenting my situation. I hit rock bottom. I really did. I hit absolute rock bottom. My friends were asking me, well, how are you? And I just kept saying the same answer. I realized, I'm like, God, how boring is it that I keep saying I'm unhappy? You know, I mean, it was just,
you were a victim.
Totally victim, the victim, and nobody was going to rescue me. And thankfully I had the opportunity, not thankfully, because, well, it sort of became an opportunity where my dad here in Panama, who both my parents are 85 and almost 90. But in that moment, my dad had to have a surgery. My mom couldn't handle it by herself. And so I came down to help for a couple of weeks, which took me out of that whole prison that I felt I was in. Went back to Maine after that, and then quit my job and came to Panama again. And this time I came for about 6 weeks, not having any expectations, just sort of doing something different, just going to see my family. And I had some really wonderful, wonderful friends. An old college roommate and her husband took me to the Pearl Isles, where they had a vacation home. And the Pearl Islands, if you know anything about them, they're like, it's like, you know, like in Bali or Indonesia, you know, it's like a whole bunch of tons and tons and tons of little islands that are uninhabited. But we were out there, and they really did these two friends, my friend and her husband, just kind of gave me that space to think and to have moments of clarity. And it was I just had a lot of aha moments. And by the end of those 8 days, thinking more and more, and every day in those 8 days, there was just a little bit more clarity and a little bit more clarity. And things that I was doing, I had never snorkeled before. I jumped in the water and snorkeled. I was 40 pounds heavier. You know, I felt big. I felt unhealthy. My mind was unhealthy. But I was daring. I was daring to go jump in the water. We would go to an uninhabited island, and I would literally just jump off the boat. I had nothing to lose. It was right?
Like you were rock bottom, and you're like, why not?
Whatever.
Whatever happens.
Yeah. And so when I came back from that 8-day trip, I came back to my parents' apartment and said, I think I've made a decision. And I went back to Maine and spoke to my husband, and we were on the same page. It was something that, you know, was definitely going to be coming. We both had thought about it, and I got the courage to tell him the day after I arrived, and then he made me breakfast, and we watched a football game. And basically what I said was, you know, I think we really do need to get divorced, and I want to go down and live with my parents in Panama. And the rest of my family just kind of grabbed my bags and left.
How did the kids take that?
Oh, well, that was I had this answer rehearsed, like, home is where we are, you know. Well, that we can curse, right?
Yeah, of course.
That was absolute bullshit with my daughter. My daughter she was in her 20s, and she's like, that answer, home is where we are, like, that just did not fly with her at all. My son was I think, more affected. He was just about to graduate from college, and I was thinking about waiting until he graduated from college in May, but I couldn't do it anymore. So this was in October of 2021. He was graduating in 22. But I think, from hearing lots of different stories and different people, I just heard a story just the other day that I didn't know that my kids could hear us arguing. But this is what a friend told me.
They always hear.
They always heard, and there were times when they said, I mean, we argued about just the stupidest thing. This is black. No, that's purple. No, I mean, just the dumbest things. But if they would turn into arguments, and
I remember listening to my parents. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think for them it was okay. They were both not going to be returning home, so it was just going to be me and my husband, and that wasn't going to fly anymore for me. And so I said, I'm going to dare. I'm going to dare greatly. A friend of mine gave me a book. I think I have, Daring Greatly, Brene Brown. Without daring, nothing happens. But daring in that moment of fear is the most powerful thing that we can possibly do. Because when I came back and I said, I know that I wanted to get at a divorce. And then about a day or two later, I was in my parents' kitchen, and I remember I just stopped dead in my tracks, and I'm like, what am I feeling right now? What am I feeling? It's like, oh, I'm terrified. This is terrifying. Like, just absolutely terrifying. But when I said at that very moment, this is really scary. Tengo miedo. I said it in Spanish. Tengo miedo. I have fear. Something just happened, and it just sort of liberated me. Because I recognized what I was feeling, and I said, okay, well, what do I do with this emotion? I can recognize it. I can accept that this is scary. I'm still going to take those steps. So I came down to Panama with a couple of suitcases, and I packed a couple of boxes with most of my, my personal valuable items, and said the material stuff doesn't matter anymore. It's me.
Well, one question, Maria. Well, you went through the worst hardship, that was the cancer, and not knowing what's going to happen to you. Do you think what happened to you with the divorce, it was somewhat easier to take that step? Frightening, but not as frightening as already what you went through with the
That's
cancer?
an interesting question. I've never been asked that. To correlate my reaction with, I can probably say yes. Maybe because I had already been through something so rough that possibly I did. I've never really thought about that. You're going to leave me thinking about that. You are.
Because sometimes you get so strong with all the hardship you went through. So maybe that divorce part, it was kind of easier. Just, okay, I dare to do this. Now I'm going to dare. This will be my last step, right? I don't know.
Well, now that I'm thinking about it, it's like I don't think it was the same feeling at all, because when we were dealing with his illness, it wasn't like I had to do something new. I was following the instructions of the doctors and the next steps that we needed, so today we have this appointment, and the next day moving here was just something totally different.
At that point, you were a caregiver. As a caregiver, one tends to lose itself and forget about yourself.
I did. I went so many, and I went from caregiver to like finding something that I want, doing what I wanted to do, then caregiver, and then doing something that I wanted to do.
Exactly. You were like
leaving that, yo-yo. And then,
yo-yo
so
life.
every time, this up and down, which we all have, everyone has an up and down life. Everyone. There's no perfect, like everyone has situations that present themselves that are difficult. We have family, friends that die or have accidents, or, there's all kinds. Everyone has difficult situations. They run out of money. Or they don't know what their next step is.
But it's never easy, because you are in a situation where this wasn't your plan. right?
No, but we can't really plan our lives.
No, we can't.
But
But in
this-
that
No.
process, yeah, there's a lot of anger and
There
resentment.
was a lot of, yes, the resentment, I think, was the big word for me at that point, was resentment. And then feeling sorry for myself.
Mhm.
And then being the victim. So I just was the perfect victim, like, why is
We
this
all
happening
are.
to me? Especially when I
No,
was working during the COVID
But
years.
this was the
I was-
experience that you needed to grow.
Absolutely. And
Yeah.
now I'm a firm believer in that everything happens for a reason. Everything.
Mhm.
Everything happens for a reason. No matter how tragic it is or how good it is, we learn something from everything that happens.
And everyone.
And everyone. Yes.
yeah.
Yeah.
I
And
mean-
some people in our lives for a little while, some people in our lives for a long time. Everyone presents themselves in, our lives at the right moment in time. And what do we learn from that?
Yeah.
But
I know Maria since I was in boarding school in Boston.
Yeah, we met
We're
in
talking about 85, 86?
85. Yeah.
85. And for me, it's finding her, it's a completely transformed person. I mean, we went to the jungle together, remember, in Ecuador,
We did. We did. And we survived.
1986. Yeah, we
Yes.
survived. And I remember your fear that we were so irresponsible. And then again, we went to, by coincidence, everything happens for a reason. We went to American University together. I mean, I found Maria again there. And then life took us again, and she went to the I Am workshop. And I found that she's I wouldn't say a completely different person, but evolved, spiritual, and suddenly we went back in the same path. Do you want to tell us a little bit about that?
I would
how
love
you
to tell
ended
you
up
about
in the
that.
workshop and
Yes, because so when I'm starting my new chapter, everything is new. It's like I'm in school again. I'm in a university, and I'm living in a city that I've never, this city is completely different than it was 47 years ago. It's a city now. And with these, and so I just said, you know what, I'm just going to kind of go through the process. I want to get to know myself again. I want to get to know myself again. And I just am like, just one course after another, getting back to my psychology, getting back to my spirituality, and opening up my consciousness, knowing what I was thinking about, and my intuition. And my intuition was one of the best gifts that I have received in this transformation of these years. Something kept calling me to Ana Maria. I hadn't seen her in years, but something, and I know it was my intuition. I said, I am going to get to see her. I am going to see her. Well, a couple of things presented themselves. Like one time I was going to go see you, but then I think your mother got sick and that trip got canceled. And then she moves to California. And I'm like, okay, well, I need to go to California. And when I thought about it, I'm like, well, that's insane. What I'm just going to go to California? Yeah, I'm going to go to California to see someone that I haven't seen in years. Because Ana Maria and I, we weren't like super, super, super close, but there was a connection that was undeniable.
The frequency,
And
it's that vibe.
Big time. I mean, I feel like she's like my sister. And sorry, you are like my sister, because you're right here in our conversation right now. And so when you mentioned the I Am workshop, I'm like, I'm there. I think I was the first one to sign up.
yeah. Yep.
Because I just want to keep learning and learning and learning and growing and growing and growing.
I am right here. See?
And there,
shirt.
Share the
shirt.
T-shirt. Yes.
I Am.
And
Lovely.
Lolly was the one that designed
Lolly
the
designed
T-shirt,
these.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah.
The other.
So this wonderful workshop that I just kept hearing about, and I had no idea what was going to happen at the workshop, like zero idea. I knew that there was going to be a documentary maker. I knew that there was going to be an artist. So both of Maclovia and Loli I had never met. And I knew we were going to talk about the Berkman method and finding purpose and painting. And there was going to be about 8 or 10 of us. That's all I knew. So I just kind of went with the flow, which is another one of my favorite words, is just go with the flow. And that was an amazing 4 days, 4 days of connecting with different people who all were, I mean, we were all just incredibly different, right? For me, it was a combination of, the art, the painting, because I had just started painting about 3 or 4 months before that. So meeting Loli and having, Loli give me advice on the painting and how to sign, or actually to sign my paintings, because I was going through the name process and the name changes, and it's my last name, my married name, because I had legally changed it and the whole thing. She's like, sign. You got to sign your painting. You got to own it. And another great piece of advice that Loli had given me was like, when you're painting, try to remember what you're feeling. And in the back of that painting, do you remember, Loli?
Yeah.
In the back of the painting, write down the emotions that you were feeling while you were painting that, which I thought was really, really cool advice. And then I did remember one of the best stories from that I Am workshop is Loli. Well, Fernanda, there was another woman, Fernanda, and she said, "Oh, you've got to go down to this river." Loli just took us down to this river/creek on her property, because we were painting outside. And
they didn't tell you about the bears.
The bears, yeah, the bears.
There were bears, yeah, there were bears, and
we didn't tell if it was.
We didn't tell. And I remember saying, "No, I don't. Fernanda, you go. I don't need to go. I don't need to do that." And I remember Loli was a little bit insistent, and she's like, "Come on, let's go." I was in the middle of a painting. She's like, "Come on, come with me." I don't want to cry. That was probably one of the strongest points for me, was standing in this creek that was so high. And she said, "Just take off your shoes, And I remember just standing in the water, and Loli was standing by the car. So she wasn't in the water. You weren't in the water.
Mm-hmm.
And the water just kind of flowing through my feet, like through and around my feet. And I was just standing there, and Loli was like, "Just let it go. Like, just let it, just release, let go." That was super powerful. That was
So the water
very,
was
very, very
the water
powerful.
was sort of taking your emotions down the stream,
Yeah. And it was just a great workshop. I saw Fernanda, a good friend who became a good friend, just transform. I think we all did. She just transformed like right before our eyes. She just like started discovering her own worth and her own powers. And if we do all go up and down, I mean, I one day I can feel sad. I can feel like a victim. I can feel, but it's not always like just because I'm a coach, or because Annie's a psychologist, or because you're a painter, or because you're a documentary maker, that we're all perfect at our field. It's, we all have lives too that go up and down, up and down, up and down. And so we're just constantly like, but we learn from those. And how do we handle the next thing that happens? How do we think about the next thing? Do we stay the victim? I had a situation recently where I felt sucker punched by a very, very close family member whom I love with all my heart and all my soul. And I knew that there was something, with the situation was not because she made it that way. It was just out of her hands. And I could have chosen to be angry and upset with the person that I love, knowing that she had made some decisions based on other circumstances. And I said, "You know what? I'm so tired of being angry, and I'm so tired of being sad, and I'm tired of, like, in Spanish we say, que pereza, like, here we go again." And so, and it was just huge. It was just a huge awakening for me. This was just this week, huge awakening of, I choose peace and love. I choose love and peace, and that's all I'm going to send. And I had people trying to get me into this drama, like, "But aren't you upset with her?" No, I chose love. I choose peace, because if I have peace, if I have love, I did this in one of my posts, then I can give peace and love.
Yeah.
And so it's just a very deliberate way of thinking that was my aha moment.
You have better things to do than engage in the drama that doesn't belong to you.
Exactly. Exactly. And I was involved, and this is still playing out,
Uh-huh.
but from a different point of view.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And if this would have been a couple of years ago, before I got divorced, or when I was more vulnerable,
Are
You
you
I would
would
have
have
been
fallen
like,
into the trap, definitely.
oh, would have been awful.
are you aware now of how you react
Oh,
to
absolutely.
people?
Absolutely.
To the
I'm
drama?
aware.
Mhm.
I think I'm aware. I mean, our goal is to be aware 100% of the time, to know what we're thinking, to be aware of our thoughts, because if you're not aware of your thoughts, you can't do anything. Like when I was thinking about taking my life, or when I was hitting that rock bottom, I was aware that I was thinking that, and I didn't want to think that, but I was still thinking it. So I knew that was really good, that I was aware that I was thinking that way, because then I could work on that and say, okay, what else can I do?
Consciousness, yeah.
You know?
Do you remember
So
when we
everything.
were at the I Am workshop, sitting in the pool, and you
Yeah,
were
I
telling
love
me
that.
you were.
Yeah.
It was so
Loved
beautiful.
it.
It was,
Yeah, we
yeah, it was
connected big
gorgeous.
time.
Yeah, we definitely connected. We had a long conversation, but you were talking about manifesting, and it was a great story. It's a really wonderful story.
Yeah. See, and so manifesting, it's interesting, because manifesting is a term that can be misused and misinterpreted.
Mhm.
Um, but I can share how I manifest. Well, I manifested that we didn't have any money while I was married. I totally manifested that.
You can do a
We ran
negative
out.
manifest.
Yeah.
Because we attract what we think about.
Mhm.
You
But
attract
when I
what you are.
was,
Your
we attract
thoughts.
what we are.
Your thoughts are everything. Mhm.
But when I was doing one course after another, different kinds of things, I did constellations, I did, reconnecting with myself, and then I did take this course called, in Spanish, it's called Tu éxito es inevitable. Your success is inevitable, by a very popular woman in Spain. Her name is Maite Isa. And I started listening to her podcast, and then she had this course, and I'm like, well, I think I want to manifest something better. I was living in my parents' apartment, clashing with my mother. It was the first time that I had lived alone ever. Actually now I live alone, but I went from there to my parents' apartment, where my mother in her 80s had full control of her apartment. And here comes Maria, and thinking it's my home as well. And that we clashed. My dad and we got along great, perfect. But I said, I think everything that I'm working on, and everything that I'm growing within myself, my mother is literally the mirror that's showing me the opposite. So I said, I don't think this is going to be a very healthy place for me to grow, and I need my privacy,
Yeah.
So when I took this course, there were a couple of things. We had a piece of pie with things that you could work on. So your job, your family, your friends, home, money, work, and so like we could choose two things that we wanted to work on. And one of them that I chose, most importantly for me, was manifesting a place to live. So, these wonderful questions arise during this program, or this course that I was taking, of what do I want? What do I want? Well, if I could have anything I want a place that has an ocean view. I want a water view I want a 2-bedroom apartment with a water view. And I'm going to put an L-shaped couch, which is going to be white, because I could never have white furniture because of my kids and my husband being a little messy. I want a furnished apartment with a water view, 2 bedrooms, and I'm going to buy my own L-shaped couch. So I started working on that, doing all the exercises, writing down what I wanted, writing down what I felt when I wanted it, writing down how I felt if I already had it. And when you're already vibrating in the frequency that you already have something, because it's so ingrained in you that you already have it, you start kind of living in that frequency, and that's what you begin to attract. And the how comes later.
That's
So
the
you
flow.
work, that's the flow.
The flow.
So we work on manifestation. You work on your limiting beliefs of like, well, why can't I have that? Why can't I have that? Because maybe I was told when I was little, you got to work really, really hard, and or you're not deserving, or you're not worth it, or all these limiting beliefs. So
We don't have the money.
no money, anything,
Yeah.
everything. But I said, well, I have a little bit of money from my divorce, from the sale of the house, and I think I'm going to use it to my best use. And so I started looking for an apartment, and then and then I just said, I'm just going to go with the steps as they come. So I looked at an apartment in the same building as my parents' apartment, and from there I found a realtor, and I said, I've got to have a water view. And he started showing me apartments, and I was in that flow. I was looking for apartments. I was getting excited. And then my dad had a really, really bad fall, and he fractured all his ribs on the right side. He had over 14, 19. They'd lost count. They couldn't even tell how many fractures were within the ribs. And I was basically the caretaker. My mother couldn't handle it. And so I was in the hospital with him for 14 days, missed my Christmas with my children. I spent Christmas in the hospital with my dad. And he got out of the hospital, and we got back to kind of, we came home with nurses and all that. And we got back to sort of a semi-normal routine again. And I said, okay, I'm going to go start looking for an apartment. And my realtor kept showing me apartments where the ocean was not in, it was, I had to do this, like, let me see if I can go into the balcony and maybe see a tiny little piece of the water. And when he finally showed me one apartment where there was literally, instead of water, they were constructing, and they were, another building was being in construction right in front of it. And I was like, I think we're going in the wrong direction. And I said again out loud in front of him and the realtor that was showing us that apartment, I said, Joe, I really need, not even need, because need is a lack of, I want an apartment with a water view. And the realtor that was showing us the apartment said, I think I have one in another area of the city. And I had never even thought about moving out to this area. It's 5 minutes from my parents' house, but I always thought I needed to be like right there, with my parents. And it was my intuition again. That's when I heard my intuition. I just heard water and the area. And I turned to my realtor and I said, I want to go look at that apartment tomorrow morning at 10 o'clock. And he was just like, oh, okay, let me see, So the next morning, 10 o'clock comes, and I came to this building, and talking to the realtor, we realized that the realtor of this apartment, we realized that we knew each other from Washington, D.C. And so we were just kind of talking as we're going up the elevator. I didn't ask how much it was. I didn't ask how many bedrooms. I didn't ask any of it until I walked in to the apartment, and I walk in and I turn to the right, and the ocean is it's here. It's right. It stopped raining.
Oh, wow.
Oh, it's right there.
It's right
Beautiful.
there. And then I said, well, how many bedrooms? 2 bedrooms. How much is it? Okay, well, I can afford that. I'm going to bargain down. Because I'm going to live here. And it was partially furnished. And I said, I don't like the brown couches. So, we can put those somewhere else, because I'm going to get an L-shaped couch that's going to be white. I told the realtor, like, I'm going to put my own couch here. Start looking around. I'm like, oh, it's got 2 bedrooms. It's got everything. What floor are we on? Floor 42. Oh, I didn't
In
even.
Panama, where the electricity can go away.
I'm like, oh, and I'm like, okay, that's kind of cool. And then the realtor and the owner were like, well, can you move in 2 weeks? And I'm like, okay, again, still going with that flow. Came to sign the contract the next week. She took the offer that I offered. And I signed the contract at like 2 or 3 o'clock in the afternoon. And a really good friend of mine came with me, a friend whom I had reconnected with when I was really little. So a friendship from 40, I hadn't seen this friend from 47 years ago. That was another thing. A friend from fourth grade, I hadn't seen her for 47 years or talked to her, nothing about her life. And she and I are inseparable. So she was with me and I said, well, I think it's time to go look for the couch because I'm moving in next week. And so we kind of went to, she's like, okay, I have 2 furniture stores, or I have some furniture stores I can take you to. So we went from this apartment to a furniture store. They didn't have the couch. And then she's like, I have another place out of the, 80 different furniture stores that are here. It's like, I have another place. And it was raining. I remember it was raining. It was like 4 in the afternoon, 5:30, 5 o'clock, like rush hour, dark. And she's like, look, we arrive at the second. She's like, look. And I look, and there's my white couch on sale in front of the door, by the front door. And I went, I'm like, oh, there's the couch that I had totally envisioned completely. I went, sat down, called the sales lady. I'm going to buy the couch. It was at the price that I wanted to pay. And I said, I need it delivered this day. And that was that. And then all of a sudden, a week later, I'm living here. And so that's when I really said, I'm really starting to believe in this energy frequency that we attract what we think about and what we feel. But we don't know how to get there until we gain consciousness.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Which is where everything starts with consciousness. Everything starts with being conscious, aware of our thoughts. Aware of our thoughts. What are we thinking? Why do I think this way? Where did that thought come from?
Mm-hmm.
And when we start asking ourselves all those all those questions, that's where the work starts.
And being
Challenge
put through
your
that
thoughts.
chaos, what Annie likes to say, chaos brings purpose.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Is that
Blessings,
it?
blessings. No, chaos
Or crisis?
You don't get your blessings or what it's for you or your manifest. You have to go through chaos and receive chaos because inside chaos, there's always comes all the light, all the blessings, etc. And it's always like that.
Yeah,
It's
losing
always like
everything
that.
can bring clarity.
Yeah. Growth.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. You all said it, all of those things.
Yeah.
I mean, it really is. It's a very interesting concept that chaos brings clarity, growth,
Mhm.
chaos. You have to get through that chaos.
So
you got to get through that chaos.
Your clients, is that the common thread with them? Is it, you said it was going through fear.
There's so many things. I think, taking the steps is where the fear comes out. Asking, what do I want? That question paralyzes people. That question changes. Sometimes one person can say one thing in one session, and then the next time I talk to her, it's a totally different. Now I don't know what I want, but yeah, it's trying to gain clarity on what we want. And it's not letting the limiting beliefs stop us from even thinking that we could have it, right? Because if I would have said, from all my limiting beliefs, I can't have that. That's too good to be true. I'm not worthy of that. All of that. I never would have even said I'm going to go for it.
Yeah.
So once I started working on my limiting beliefs, working with your inner child, the inner child that gains all those beliefs from other people, because we're born free of thought. We're born absolutely free of thought. We are born wanting to live an adventurous life. We want to touch everything. We want to go here and there. We don't even know if we're going to, go off a balcony. We have no idea because we're little children. We're little babies. We don't know. But when we're constantly being told, be careful. No, you can't do that. You have to get the right grades. You have to, no, yes. I mean, that just, it's, we, like in Spanish, we would say nos apaga. It turns us off.
Mhm.
It starts bringing that inner child, that childlike personality that we were born with, and it kind of starts bringing it down.
Disappearing.
And it's really sad. It's really sad because we become the,
Careful.
the result
Mhm.
of all of the people that raised us and everything that was around us, especially before the age of 9 or 8.
Yep.
It's a really, really interesting concept. So once we work on those limiting beliefs and we say, well, why can't I have what I want? I love myself. I'm my best friend.
If she can make it, why can't I do it the same? I mean,
Yeah.
we can
And
do
there's
it.
a million techniques, to use, surround yourself with people that are living a life like kind of like the lives that you want.
That's what we're doing.
Yeah, exactly.
That's
Exactly.
That's the I Am group.
That's the I Am group. Like,
Mhm.
surround yourself with people that are like-minded, that are getting what they want, that are vibrating at your frequency. I keep using that vibrating at frequency, but that's something that kind of came out in the last couple of weeks is
It's energy.
because I'm feeling it. I feel it from head to toe, especially when I do my meditations or my breathing work or my affirmations. I'm feeling. Yeah, I just feel electric. I feel electric.
I get that in
that's the only way.
in my head.
In the crown.
In the
crown of your
crown
head.
right here, I get a feeling,
The tingling.
like someone
It's a
has a
tingling.
balloon and they're rubbing it on my head.
That's cool.
Yeah. Sometimes
That's
it's
cool.
really strong, and then sometimes it's very subtle. But
We have to
here's something, since you're a life coach, how can people get in touch with you?
My address on Instagram, so it's at MariCoach21. MARI, the word coach 21.
Okay.
Okay.
21. Okay.
Maria Richardson. Okay.
Thank you,
Thank
Mari,
you.
for coming.
Yeah, thank you so
Thank
much,
you for
Mari.
having me today. Thank
You're
you
amazing.
for
Thank
you for being in my
very
life.
interesting.
Thank you. Well, this is just the beginning. This chapter is literally just the beginning. It's very exciting, when you're enthused about life, because you could start thinking that you can create the life you want.
And you're living on that energy now because
Yeah.
you're happy, you're joyous, you're like, wow, look at this,
You're coming from abundance.
Vibrate. Yeah,
not lack.
You get to create now with intention, with a clear mind.
Big time.
Yeah.
But I'm also open to everything. I'm open to change. I'm open to other possibilities. I'm open to the flow. People don't really
you're
like
like a
that
little
flow
kid
part.
in Disneyland.
I am.
I am.
like that. That's
You want
really
to try
great.
every ride.
yeah.
That's good.
Well, thank you so much, Maria, for coming on the
welcome.
show.
Thank you. Yeah, I can't wait to be back. I really. We'll see.
You'll be back. You'll be back.
Definitely. Okay.
Well, you know what? Can you hear my voice? Does it sound really good?
It sounds amazing.
Okay.
So sexy.
The first half, I didn't have it plugged in.
Oh my God.
I know. And look, I made a list now.
Doing a podcast at 50 something is